Firstly, I've got a big shout out to Rosemary Cole and her benefits team, who she's specially arranged for them all to be here today. So welcome, guys. So what are these sessions about? It's about us showing you the progress that we've made, what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, what we've been testing, what we've been working on, and what feedback we've already had from yourselves and customers. So this is the ambition of the project. Those of you that have been coming for a while are now familiar with this. The words in orange are the key ones that we're working towards, something that we understand, that's fair, accessible, and beneficial to all our residents. So these are a couple of quotes. We talked about the vision and the ambition with Jennifer in quite a lot of detail earlier on in the project. And these are a couple of quotes from that session, how she views it and how we've taken them on board with the service. In particular, the one on the left, I think, is one that we should all take on board. Everything that everybody does should be geared around preventing homelessness. So what we've been trying to do going forward is identify and understand customers' vulnerability. We've created the vision for the service that's based on a pathway that builds. So the people on the top will be looking at a light touch, self-service, digital tools type approach. Those are people that can help themselves, and people that we should encourage to help themselves when we identify that they're capable. Is something we want to nudge those people down. People in the middle, it's a bit more of the approach that we apply to everybody now, with personal housing plans, check-ins, nudge and support, but we want to move more people onto the self-service type group and keep those people that we need to do that greater work with in the middle. And then at the bottom we've got the ever-growing number of people that we all know about, the cases that go around all our services, around council in general, that have multiple and complex needs. And that's the kind of casework that we want staff's time to be focused on going forward. They need most support and help. So to translate that into a tube map for the service, those of you that are familiar with the tube lines in Hackney will notice that the Overground and the Victoria line are very prominent on this. So the key things we just highlight with this is the approach. So the approach isn't about just someone coming in for a homelessness advice interview. It's any kind of approach, a referral from the third sector, someone phoning any of our sections, a walk-in, benefits change and search would be a really good example of this as well. And the key point for all of this is understanding that customer's vulnerability, looking at what they're capable of, what assets they have, and what support they need. And then depending on that, the outcomes of that, decide what route they will take. So the top route, like I said before, is more the light touch, the advice and signposting. The middle route, creating a shared plan, checking in and nudging them along. And then the multidisciplinary type casework that goes on with the more important complex problems at the bottom. All looking for a similar sort of outcome, finding and maintaining a settled home. So underlying this, we developed a set of service principles. These are the principles. We did an away day with team managers recently, where we talked about these a lot and did a lot of work around these is already starting, and there'll be more to come on that going forward. So today's focus, as I said, the key to this is understanding vulnerability. So there's going to be some feedback on the work that's been going on there. Information and evidence is one of the major projects that we're going on. What information and evidence do we need on each of those journeys and how do we collect it? And then the third one is an update on what's been going on about collaborative casework. That's mainly about the different ways that we're communicating with customers. And of course, there will be an update on the infamous, most popular single view. So understanding vulnerability.
Okay, so this is such a big crowd. Okay, so understanding vulnerability at this point, when we decide what journey people should take and what's appropriate for them. Just a little recap about what this is and isn't. This is about building on your professional expertise and picking up on those kind of like red flags and things that you've probably already noticed and thinking about how we mainstream that across the service. We do not want to create another long checkbox assessment for you. So we're going to be thinking about how can we give you tools that support the way that you already work and really allow you to use your professional judgment. So the question that we're asking is, how can we design some tools and ways to help you decide what is the appropriate level of intervention, or which is the different pathway that a resident should take, by understanding both their needs and their vulnerability, but also their kind of assets and capabilities. So it's this point in the journey. So this sprint, over the past couple of weeks, we wanted to do two things. First of all, we started collecting a long list of all the indicators that someone might be vulnerable. And we wanted to prioritize that into a couple of smaller characteristics of indicators of vulnerability and indicators of assets. And start to identify what are the points in the journey that we can start turning these into some tools or products that help you as officers understand a resident's level of vulnerability. So last week we ran a workshop with Jen and some other people from Benefits and Housing Needs. We had people there from Adult Social Care, from Public Health, from Children's and Young People Service. And we wanted to learn what tools already exist. We're not going to be the first people who've had this idea that, you know, maybe we should, maybe residents could receive a different level of service based on their needs and assets. So we wanted to surface lots of tools and approaches that already existed in other services, and also start to make some trade-offs and get this list down to a smaller number of characteristics that we can look at that can form some of the content for these tools. So some of the things that came out that could suggest that someone moves up to either the middle pathway or the top pathway. One of the big things that came out was resilience. And actually a lot of this depends on a resident's individual resilience and how well they're currently dealing with setbacks. Might mean that they're more suitable for the middle or top pathway. We talked a lot about a strong social network, so that might be family or friends or others who are supporting that person and mean they might be able to help themselves. Is that person already actively engaged? Are they already taking steps to resolve their own situation? Stable employment and income is pretty self-explanatory. Are they IT literate? That top pathway is probably going to have lots of digital tools, so there'll need to be some level of IT literacy to be able to manage that totally on your own. And also just the ability to make an inquiry as something that could indicate that a resident is able to go through one of those top pathways. Slightly longer list for the things that might suggest that someone needs that lower pathway, that really intensive multidisciplinary service. So we identified care leavers as a big group of people that really could use that multidisciplinary approach. If people are actively currently fleeing domestic violence, if there's been a recent emotional shock and quite a big change in that person's life, something, if they have active cases with other services, then that in itself shows that a really multidisciplinary approach would be beneficial. If that person has no recourse to public funds, there was a big discussion there over what duty do we owe them, but actually they might be the most vulnerable, so how can we support them? Antisocial behaviour, again, came out as an indicator. Thinking about extreme or unusual behaviour or outliers. If someone's making tens and tens of complaints, or someone's making absolutely no requests for repairs in a year, what could that tell you about their situation? Is there something you want to investigate further? People that are time poor, so they might be already accessing lots of different services, going to the job centre and other things, and actually, do they have the time to be able to help themselves? And also obsessively making complaints, which again is similar to that extreme or unusual behaviour. We learned from other tools and approaches as well. So it feels like there's quite a nice parallel with safeguarding. So actually, what are those couple of questions that anyone in any service, not necessarily just in benefits and housing needs, but other services and partners could ask to identify those flags really early on, and identify that someone might be at risk as they're approaching. Other services like health visitors kind of decide the level of service to give a mother based on her level of vulnerability, so what can we learn from them? And then there's a bunch of indicators here from the Troubled Families program in the Children and Young People Service. And if a family has 2 out of these 6 characteristics, then they're worked with. So there's other things that we can learn from as well. We've talked a couple of times about 3 conversations in adult social care. So we're learning about how they have that conversation to identify what someone's strengths and assets are. They said that another council's using a list of 100 potential prompt questions. We're not going to get to ask 100 questions. We're just going to try and learn what are the kind of ways that they're identifying strengths and assets. So building on what already exists.
Great. So now it gets to the point where we get into the fun bit. So based on everything that we've learned in the last couple of weeks, couple of sprints, we're now at the stage where we've come up with lots of ideas and test that across the service. So we've identified 2 different moments in the customer's journey where we might be able to create something which helps us identify vulnerability as early as possible, but also give you the right information that you need to be able to do your job. So the initial contact being the first one. So this is in housing, but has potential benefits across the council. How can we design something which is light touch enough that potentially residents can do themselves, or people on the front door or the triage desk downstairs could be doing, to be able to spot possible vulnerabilities as early as possible. And then later on, if people are then thrown into the service and they're actually talking to a housing officer, or they're going through a little bit more active casework, what could we give housing officers? Yes, so in housing, so the second part, in housing officers, housing service, housing needs benefit service. Sorry.
Just we've got housing colleagues here, so
yeah, housing needs benefits. So yeah, once we're then into this service, what can we be giving housing officers to actually support them to ask the right questions, but also to be able to surface vulnerabilities as well as strengths and assets, so we can actually see what's going on, so we know what best work to be doing with an individual. So what does this look like? We don't know yet, so we're going to have a week of ideation, coming up with lots and lots of ideas to test, but it's being able to support officers, support people downstairs, or support residents themselves to actually think through some of this stuff, but also try and surface both strengths and vulnerabilities, so we can respond to residents in the right way. So as I said, so this week is all about ideas. So we'll be putting our heads down and we're trying to involve as many people in that as possible to test in a light touch way and early as possible what these might be. We need to get your feedback as well on content. So we don't want you to go through a 100-question arduous assessment. So we're trying to come up with the lightest touch thing that we can be doing. So we're testing that with you. And then for the next couple of weeks, we'll be trying to develop digital tools, but also kind of supporting tools as well. So what could we potentially be giving officers like discussion guides or prompts or nudges so that we can actually start asking some questions. So that will be the next couple of weeks. So hopefully you'll hear from us and doing some interesting testing.
when do we get to ask questions? Are you going to do anything with, so for instance, Rosemary's benefits and housing needs officers who are primarily not on the front end, but are getting exactly that kind of information every single day as changes circumstances. Are you going to pick up anything with them in the next sprint on how they can contribute to that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Because that's a whole raft of information that we do nothing with in benefits.
It's me being incredibly pedantic and won't have any impact on how this works. But shouldn't the diagram be the other way round? Because when you say the more vulnerable they are, we're moving them down, that sort of jars with me as being counterintuitive. And actually I flipped the diagram around so that the highest vulnerable was the top line, so that you're moving people up. Are you getting what I mean?
The way we've done it at the moment is so that it's self-service is that default pathway, and then you kind of drop down into a level of support
If you need it, if you that you can always, crisis hopefully it won't be forever, so that you can move back up to a sort of steady state.
Oh, okay.
That's hopefully.
Yeah, it's just I did it the other way round. So those that need the most vulnerable were the top line. You're going, moving them up the support. But
Think of it sinking and floating. We're along the top and floating on the third.
Yes. Swimming up like
David on the second slide that was shown earlier, we had 9 boxes. Where would mental health support these people that come out, or are we interviewing with regards to appearance?
Yep.
Appearance give at least 40% of
I think when we see, I suppose for me, Prakash, I think they tend to come in active cases with other services. 9 times out of 10, they are already known to another service. I think that's where they've been. I don't know if that's what other people think.
So we like those were all indicators that we hadn't prioritized, but we were trying to get it down to a smaller set that might indicate these other things. So as Jen said, it's probably included in there. But this is the content that we will be constantly iterating over the next couple of weeks. So if you think anything is missing or doesn't feel covered by those orange boxes and blue boxes, please come grab us afterwards. We'll make sure that we capture that.
So, information and evidence. Our main focus for the last 2 weeks of our work has been the waiting time calculator. So just to recap, our long-term goal for the waiting time calculator is a web-based app where residents can get an accurate estimate of their wait time on the register before receiving a housing allocation. And we think the calculator can reframe residents' housing expectations. We have 2 prototypes which we're testing at the moment. One is an online prototype which isn't public facing at the moment, it's just with internal teams. And that tool is for people who are on the register and have a bidding number. And the other waiting time tool that we're using is an Excel spreadsheet, which is based on an effective ban date. So we can use that tool for people who aren't on the register. Earlier this month, we were testing the waiting time calculators with colleagues down in customer services. So they were taking inquiries from residents coming in with a bidding number and wanting to bid for a property. And we found from those sessions really useful insight from customer services officers, but we found that it was too late in a customer's journey for the tool to have any impact on their attitudes or their behaviour. So what we've been doing for the last 2 weeks has been testing the tools at earlier stages in a customer journey, which Jerome is going to speak to you about.
Okay, so last week I joined Chris Caden, went to the Housing Management Office based in Queensbridge and Winkler Housing Management Office, okay, and we were using the spreadsheet prototype, which is a snapshot of the housing register in totality, and it was like a front sheet, which then extracts data from the database data to the front. And so we can just give you the bite-sized data that we need to show how many applications exist before the customer's effective date for that bedroom in that particular band. And then how many applications in a higher band, the same bedroom will also exist, and then dividing that by the number of properties and social housing to give you your waiting time. So that's basically how it works. We're testing it with the Housing Management Office because one of the things that come out from the Housing Management Office is transfer applications. So customers that already live in social housing, they've outgrown their accommodation for one reason or another, and they've approached their housing office to say, I want to move to an alternative social housing property. And so we're using the housing register waiting time tool in order to change the way in which they approach transfers, and to see if there is an opportunity to steer them more towards customer-led alternatives like mutual exchanges, housing moves, home swapper, and some of these other options that they may have been closed off to because they were more geared towards transfers and joining the register. We've also been trialling it with self-hosting as well. Okay, so this is more around front-end assessment. So when we're initially doing our engagement, we're entering a household and we talk to them about the fact that they've just joined the housing register, what the local East Act 2011 means to them as well, on the basis that they've been approved after the 9th of November 2012. And the fact that the private sector is as much as a cast-iron option for them to be housed as much as it is in the council accommodation. So that's bringing them, as part of that assessment, as part of that initial engagement, we're then gauging what their opinions is about getting the social housing property whilst they're to then upgrade in the journey. Okay. So As part of the pilot as well, we've developed a feedback form which we're asking practitioners when they're engaging staff, customers, to fill in. So this gauges what their opinions were before we started talking to them, and then at the end of the appointment, also what their opinions were. What you can see is after they've been told about the waiting time, very likely are pretty much removed from the equation. So what we can see is that there's a change in mindset in terms of what they believe that they're going to get a social housing policy. The likelihood is that they're not. And once they've seen that information factually, that message is quite clear. So that's one of the good things that came out from this. Again, there's not a lot of data here, and I can appreciate that. We've already surveyed about 7 customers so far, and then it was only last week we started information gathering in this way. So it looks like we're going to be doing this over the next month or so. So we'll be comparing data, compiling it, then analysing it, and then sharing it with the rest of you to see if it follows this same trend.
So the neutral ones stayed neutral, but the likely and very likely shifted over to unlikely.
That's how it looks. From what I understand, it was someone that was highly likely that had shifted into
Okay, so they all moved down.
But they all
Okay,
moved down.
interesting.
Yeah. So that's pretty much where we are. Right.
Excuse me. Will you be retesting these people to find out how their perceptions change over time? You initially tested them in, say, 6 months, and then a like running 6 months again.
I know, of course. The pilot's definitely open to that. What we're trying to do as well is broaden the number of customers that we're to start off with. And then once we've reached a number of statistical significance, then we can start to retest it over a period of time.
Right, sorry. I just want to ask a question. This is probably the exception to the rule, but someone being in TA for 4 years is told they have another 5 years. But then they got replaced within 2 months.
Okay.
So I was just wondering
Sure.
if that was in the equation.
Good question. I mark that quite frequently, so I'll answer that. The waiting time tool is an indicative waiting time, which is based on a mathematical equation. What it doesn't account for is the people that have an earlier effective date or in a higher band, what their bidding behaviours are going to be.
Or their own bidding behaviour.
Or their own bidding behaviour. If everybody that was of a higher priority than the customer you've mentioned actually was more of an active bidder, then the waiting times would apply. The issue is with choice-based listings, people can also choose not to engage in bidding at all, which then, causes a false economy where they believe that they're closer to a social housing property when they're actually not.
It may well have been that she got the message and suddenly started bidding like crazy and got lucky on a week that nobody else bid actively. Well done. Rocket up the arm.
And it also depends on the amount of properties. So there's some weeks where we've only got 7 properties, so you'll have a high number of people bidding. And then there'll be another week where we've got a load more, like 20 or 25. So it gives them a better opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the questions we asked as part of the feedback was, would you like to hear more about alternative housing options? And what we found by and large was 100% of them wanted to know about the alternative options. And also they wanted to access this information online as well. So you can see this in the public realm, there's a real hunger for this type of information to be widely available. Right, okay, so during the course of doing the implementation of the Housing Management Office, whilst we were training on how to use we was getting feedback as we was doing the training. And what I gauged from the conversations I was having is that there was a real appetite for frontline staff to know this information. Knowing more about advanced housing data and how we can use that to shape and shift the conversation we're having with customers, especially around managing expectation. We're taking a data-led approach. It removes the element of opinion and that skepticism. So in the long run, it does help us to put us in a stronger position to steer the conversation towards alternative housing options, which gets the customer more proactive, generates less complaints because now they're taking a more proactive approach around how to solve the road crisis. And it works out for us in the long run as well, because it means that we're able to do more with the freedom of resources to now help people keep more money.
Are we at the stage now where we're ready to start testing this on the website, or maybe with Councillor Renison at a surgery, so we get some feedback? Sorry.
It's something we're considering for the next sprint, so either putting it on the Hackney Council website or putting it on the ELLC website.
Okay.
I haven't thought about testing it at a surgery before.
As Councillor Renison's our lead member, I'm sure she'd be more happy to, and the ward councillors, Patch would be happy to.
Sure.
Yeah?
Really interesting. So, just the takeaways from that, I think one of the main things we're interested in exploring a bit further is how can we have this tool in the most impactful setting. So when someone was newly accepted for a homelessness duty, or they were making a transfer application, this was a new situation for them and they were at a moment of choice. So that's when I think we have the most leverage to use the tool to frame our further discussions around housing solutions. And I think it can add value to the council as well if it proves to be effective. So we spend a lot on temporary accommodation each year. We take in hundreds of transfer applications each year. If this tool is effective, it might be able to reduce TA costs possibly, and it might be able to reduce the inefficient use of officer time as well. So we are interested in developing tests for the tool to be on the website, and we're going to be working through those over the next few weeks. And I think just the final point here, this comes back to what Jerome was saying a minute ago about using it to steer conversations. So this tool is very good for setting expectations, but then the what next and what support do we provide to get people to look at different housing solutions as opposed to just social ones is really important. And yesterday I ran a workshop with 8 operational managers to look at how we might develop a new approach to messaging. And our goal was to think about embedding consistent, accurate and effective messaging on housing expectations throughout the service. And this is all of us singing from the same hymn sheet, which I've heard in And some of the problems we discussed was inaccurate and inconsistent information. How do we make the private rental sector more appealing? And how do we make the content on the website framed in a way that is pushing people towards realistic housing solutions as opposed to housing register? And some of the next steps we took away from that session we're going to be working on. So the first 2 here around the messages, I think there's an interesting balance between creating a uniform, consistent messaging or messages that we communicate at every interaction, next to more tailored messages that are relevant in certain intervention points, but not relevant in others. Another thing we discussed was communicating to residents the reality of temporary accommodation. So what are the health, employment and educational outcomes, often negative? What are those outcomes for people who are going into temporary accommodation, and how might we communicate those outcomes to residents? And then the final point that we discussed was changes to the website. So we had a good discussion around how other councils frame their website so it's pushing people towards the private rented sector, and Jennifer mentioned Waltham Forest as a good example of this. So over the next 2 weeks we're going to be looking at the content of the website and how we can start to make improvements. So our main focus is taking the impact that we found with the waiting time tool and putting it in a position where it's one aspect of a larger piece of work, which is around messaging.
I just want to take the opportunity while you're all here. So I bumped into the mayor in the town hall on Friday, who came up to me and said verbatim, "Oh Jennifer, you'd be really proud of me. I had a surgery today and I was really robust with my messaging about social housing." So for those of you who've asked me in the past, what do the mayor and members think about this when we're saying it's 34 years away for social housing, the time is right. We have to be genuine with our residents. We have to say to them, if it's a ridiculously long wait, what that wait is, so they can make informed, intelligent decisions. Yeah, so the mayor is on board with that, members are on board with that. They know it's an unpalatable message, but they understand the need for that message as long as then we offer support with getting them into the PRS and speaking to them about their other options. Yeah, so just to make you aware that don't be nervous about making those, about delivering those messages.
Hi everyone. Sorry. I'm Arto. I'm one of the housing needs team managers and oversee all the single homeless provision. And Tony is based at the Homerton Hospital. He's our hospital discharge navigator. And what we thought would be really useful is to give you a bit of a landscape of what Tony does and how we've been working with the hospital so far. And then we kind of talk about the collaborative caseworking more in detail. That what we've kind of been testing and kind of what we're going to be doing going forward. So over to Tony.
Yeah. Surprised I took me so many people. I was Anyway, just sort of introduce myself as a lot. What I do. For the last couple of years, I've been working.
Oh, there you Tony, just
about it. Oh, come on. For the last few years, I've been working as a hospital discharge officer. I'm basically situated at Homerton Hospital. I work within integrated discharge team, so it's made up of social workers and package staff and discharge planners who are at the NHS. What I do is I get referrals from social workers, discharge planners to see people that are homeless or housing issues, and how I get that is normally by emails. One of the things we were looking at is how we can maybe improve things, because quite often someone will come into hospital here for last week and have to be discharged, that they're homeless or they're can't return home or whatever. So we designed a sort of checklist that distributes into the wards, both the general needs side and the mental health side of things, so they can try and identify people that are homeless sooner. About making it better and getting them out. So it's one of the areas that generally tend to think about or to homeless patients. So it's about, so we've introduced that, that's been given out to all wards. And in terms of the mental health side, we've emailed that to all wards. The leaflet checklist for the mental health is slightly different, because a lot of people in the mental health side might have care needs or businesses, so we're trying to get them to package that information at one email rather than million emails. Consistency. Getting the idea of the checklist is to prevent people just sort of turning up and being discharged and nowhere to go. What the sort of challenge is that we see sort of going forward is trying to get the hospital to work in the way we want them to work and the way they're used to working. And what we're going to look at as well is sort of reviewing how it's going. This is something we've introduced quite recently. We'll review it maybe a few months, how it's working, see if we can tweak it, maybe open for suggestions.
And I think Tony undersells himself. He comes into contact about 400 patients each year, and that's a lot of people for one navigator to go around and be involved in. Which is also why we're doing and trying new things, is to ease Tony's work and actually educate the hospital staff. And when Tony was talking about the kind of leafleting and the kind of identifying people much sooner who are at risk of homelessness. So what tends to happen is that the patient goes into the hospital and the hospital staff will then ask, do you have an address that you can return to? And as long as they just give them an address, that's usually where it's then left. However, what we now asking not the hospital staff is not just to leave it there. It's kind of, we all kind of, it's everyone's role is preventing people's homelessness. And if we just ask, do they have a current address that they can return to, that doesn't really say much to us. And actually what is happening more and more is a few days before they get discharged, we then discover that actually they're just being evicted, their rent's not being payment, the relationship with the landlord has really gone sour, it's all of basically that the tenancy is in a mess. So what we're asking the hospital staff to do is actually ask proper questions about their address or where their current tenancy is, just to kind of start identifying the at-risk patients much earlier. So the idea is that, particularly from the mental health side, is that we would get a referral 2 months earlier before their discharge, and that then allows us that as soon as they're ready to go on daily, independently from the hospital, we can then assess them, and then ideally, as previously mentioned, what tends to happen now is because we have very short notice. When the patient is going to be discharged, the only option that we usually have is to place them into temporary accommodation, and that's what we are trying to move away from, is that if we work with the individual much earlier, we will probably have a better housing option or solution for them, i.e. could be a private tenancy. We can plan better, and that then takes the pressure off from the temporary accommodation team and the officers and Tony chasing up the documents in drips and traps. So we're kind of really trying to push that much upstream, so that it benefits not just the individual, but kind of everyone who's been involved, and it's save us some cost as well on the temporary accommodation side.
I was just going to say as well, the other people, I know there's an intervention team that's been tried in here or introduced.
Will be, yeah.
Yeah, that's another area where we like to identify homelessness earlier. Yeah, that might be another option to
Just one final a change we've made, which we're driving at the moment, is Tony is now doing triages in the general needs hospital side. So he's always been doing it and kind of taking notes and all of that, having that conversation, collating all the documents. But then it's kind of been emailed to the greenhouse, and then greenhouse officers will then do the triages and the assessments. So Tony's kindly trialing that for us. Slowly. Yeah, that's I think credit to Tony that he's really embraced the change and actually taking that board and willing to give it a go. So that's really all from us, I think.
Thank you.
I'm going to say it should be useful, particularly with the mental health. If they go into mental health services and are going to be in there for a long while, it would be useful if we were told, because everything might be fine, but we might 2 months later get post-return. If we don't know they're in a hospital, we might end the benefits, or it could cause overpayments and things. So actually, if they know they've gone in, they're on housing benefit, they're going to be in there for a considerable period. If we know it,
as you said, that would be something worth taking.
Definitely. Any other questions? Yes.
I want to ask a sort of general question which follows on from this as well. Is there's a lot of focus on getting them into alternative accommodation or dealing with that, but doing what I've been doing needs to become really apparent that once they're in, they need support beyond that to get them up and running. And is that encompassed in this?
Well, there's one support offer across the borough we probably don't make enough use of, that we should be referring people into as soon as we place them, if we think that's the case. And then also if it is social housing and it is council housing, then there's the residents' sustainment team in the neighbourhood. So I think that's very much more about using what is already there, that capacity, because it is there.
And particularly from the mental health side, if you're coming out of there, you will have a care plan, and you should have care coordinators, and a lot of that work. And what we don't want to do is duplicate the work, and actually someone who has a really robust care plan in place and is managing their condition and quite quite happy to live independently. It's about working that, making sure that they have the right support in place before we do put them into more separate application.
But not just about making sure it's in place, it's ensuring that the person's engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they fail, you can put as much packages in place, but if they fail to engage, it goes down very quickly, and then you're going back into the same cycle of being evicted, then going back into hospital, and then coming back through the system all over again. And that's one of the key things that have been missed off, is the engagement side of things.
I suppose it depends where they are on that tube map as well, as to whether they have a care coordinator through mental health team, or what services they're already interacting with.
I was sort of thinking of that specifically, but also more generally, where people, for example, find somewhere in private mental sector, and there's all sorts of things that maybe they haven't dealt with before, or they're
That's what the generalist floating support services, and that's borough-wide. So anyone can access that, and it's all on the website. We just refer into it.
So I'm very conscious of time. So three very brief updates, and then if you have questions, we would be around at the end, and we would love to hear your feedback on this. So over to Sabrina.
Lots of changes going on, and we don't want this to be done to staff teams. We do want staff teams to feel like they've got some say in it. So if you've got ideas, and I know people do because I've spoken to at least 4 people in the last 2 weeks who have ideas about how to improve the service, but you don't feel like there's anywhere for that to go, it feels like it's going into the ether. We want you to have a safe space where you can talk about that, share that with your peers. When I say safe space, what I mean is that there might not be managers there, you can bitch all you want for a couple of minutes, but then you need to come in with your ideas.
We all need to bitch.
Oh, I'm ready.
Yeah.
But we want you to feel able to do that, and actually if the bitching leads to something that's quite productive and useful, that's exactly what we want to happen. Also, if you're managing a service, it's often difficult to see what's going on at granular level. We're not seeing that stuff, and we need to hear what's going on. There's also we know that government says a lot about, we need to be developing a whole sort of response to things, but actually people have got their own skill sets. They might be really good at 96 housing law, they might be benefits experts, but we're all having to bring it all together. No one wants to turn up to a 6-hour training course because it's boring, but if you can come to like an hour-long session where you get to chat to your colleagues who happen to know a bit more than you, that's even better. You're more likely to retain that information. So, with that in mind, we have created, I'm sorry, but it's a shit name, and I'm really sorry. It's not bad. It's bad. It's I mean, the branding helps it, so thanks for that. We're calling it a peer practice group for now. If you've got a better name for it, please come with that as well. But it's just a space where you can share the stuff that you already know about the work that you're doing, maybe learn a little bit about someone else's area of work, come up with an idea for something that you think could be better. We want you to sort of unleash your inner activist a little bit, but this time with hope of winning in the election. So I've booked a room at the town hall for March the 5th. If you would like to come, please email me at that address. Just 2 till 4. I'll provide donuts or something, and that's it.
We'll make sure all the details are circulated on. Look out for the flyer.
So this is a 1-minute update. We're not focusing on the check-in and nudge, which some of you might know as the SMS tool this time, but just to give you a quick update on it. So thank you. Lots of you have been involved in helping us test it and have been joining in and participating. We're going to take stock of what we've learned now. As sometimes happens with testing, weirdly, some of our success hasn't been in the area that we set out to test. So it's been really, really good for checking about appointments, proofs, things like that. Apologies. But what we want to do now is kind of double down on the shared plan. So we started testing it with an idea that it was the minimum viable version of getting in touch with somebody about a shared plan. So we're going to do a bit more testing around actions and activities from PHP, then start to refocus our work on the shared plan.
Hello, I'm Matt. I'm a developer working on the single view. Just a quick update about what we're doing since the last show and share. So mainly we've been working on improving the technical stability of the single view with the end goal of giving a better experience for all of you using it. Less buggy, all that sort of thing. One of the wins we've had with this is we've created a staging environment. That's just like another copy of the application where we can do all our tinkering and that sort of thing. So we don't mess with it when you're using it. It's basically me doing that. Yeah, like a clone. So we test out new features on that. And then once they're all good, we'll put them in production and you'll have a better system overall. The other cool thing we've done this last sprint is we've done a little technical spike on getting documents out of Camino. It's all good. Hopefully you've been able to check out the documents out of UH in the last little while, so we'll be aiming to get that stuff into the single view as soon as possible. And some great news, we've got another 17 users on single view as of yesterday, I think, from the housing register team. Glenn and Sarai onboarded them yesterday, so we've got 44 users using it now. Keep the feedback coming in. That's it. Cheers.
That's kind of it. So please stick around if you have any other questions. We'll circulate or go and tell us why. And yeah, come back in 2 weeks to find out what's happening in everything.
Thank you.